So we've got 90 plus attendees already pouring in. Quick reminder to everybody, this is a webinar, so you are all muted. The only sound coming out of this is from us. I need to make sure that that's not about to start doing those things. Okay, that's working there. Alrighty, so if people want to make use of the chat, I'm seeing someone's already thrown a question in the chat. I'm going to remind everybody that we're using the Q&A process here for the questions. So please take your question and put it into the Q&A. I'll be going through that in just a moment when we're ready to actually start.
Scott, the one that's in the chat, could you, okay, thank you.
Scott, is that you just sent something to all panelists? Is that the person you meant to send it to? Scott, you're muted as well.
How do I reply to the person that emailed or put in?
Best way actually for you to do is within the chat spaces, just click on their name where it says from them to all panelists, and that will open you up a direct chat to them. Please remember afterwards to change it back to whatever, so you're sharing it with everybody afterwards.
All right, now I emailed it to everybody and them.
Yes, that's the way it works.
Yeah.
And somebody else is in as Scott.
Yeah, so I must have, sorry, I don't know how to invite people to this. I apologize. That's my fault, but that's.
Is this person?
You know what? He actually has a Scott name inside his name. He's Phil Scott, so.
Excellent.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for allowing me.
You have the ability to change your name.
I'm on it right now.
Fantastic.
Okay. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to, my bad.
I took it as a promotion.
Okay then.
There actually might be a couple more people with Phil. I apologize. They're from the Folsom Chamber, Folsom City. There's some really good partners I've been working with. I met with them.
And do you want them to be attendees or do you want them to be panelists?
Well, whatever you want to do. They're supposed to be attendees, but yeah.
Oh dear. Okay then.
It's okay. Okay.
Alan, I would be dangerous as a panelist.
Yeah. So Phil, here's what there's two options for you. One, I can put the attendee connection information and send it to you directly, and then you could leave and come back as that, which is going to be happening with a whole bunch of people who Scott gave the wrong type of account to. I haven't seen this happen for
I apologize.
No. It's okay. I can just go on mute and.
Yeah. The alternative for both of you is actually to turn your video off and go on mute. That's probably the easy way for both of that to happen. Yeah. And then so when all these people keep coming in,
there's not gonna be that many, like maybe 5. Okay.
hardly any, really. Okay.
Hey, this keeps things exciting.
It does keep things exciting, yes.
We had something very similar to this happen a couple of weeks ago where we did something for 3 centers and one of the center directors shared, rather than sharing the invitation, she shared the her panelist invitation. So we had everybody coming in that way. That was fun. All right, so we've got a whole bunch of folks here. Let me just close that off. We've got a whole bunch of folks here, something like 200. So I think it's probably worth us getting ready to start. Before we do, just going to brief everybody on using the technology we've got here. As you probably realize, you're all muted. You can't talk to us, but we can talk to you and you can see us. We can't see you. So the way for you to send questions to us is by using the Q&A box. We've already got like 20 odd questions people have put in there. We will be taking a look at those questions as we go along. 2 pieces of advice, or several pieces of advice. First of all, hold on a little bit until you see the presentation, because there's a good chance your question will be answered in the presentation. And if it isn't, please go ahead and put one in there. Before you put a question in yourself, have a look at the other people's questions that have already been posed, because if you see something that's going to give you your answer, just upvote that one, because those are the ones that are going to come to the top. Typically in these events, we have 100+ questions and no time to deal with all of them. So we take the ones that are upvoted the most, and also the ones that Anne, who's our Associate Director, realizes will be the most useful for everybody else. Please include a full sentence or full question rather than just a few words in your question, so we can make head or tail of it. And if it's related to the PPE or the IDLE or the some other loan program, please identify which program it is you're looking for. So that's it. Those are the things. Scott, I think we're ready to start. We're all streaming everywhere we should be, so go ahead.
I will. Thank you very much, Alan. I actually cannot share my screen.
Of course you can't, because I was dealing with all the extra Scots. But now you should be able to share your screen.
Thanks.
You and anyone else called Scott.
Oh, goody. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. Okay. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Northern California SBDC Small Business Development Center's COVID-19 Small Business Update. As you can see down here, we're all in this together. So quick introduction, Northern California SBDC Network. We cover the most 38 northern counties of the state. We go down the coast to Santa Cruz, cover all 9 counties of the Bay Area. Southeast is Stockton, then back up to the Oregon border. And we are supported by the SBA, Small Business Administration. So we're federally funded. We're also state funded by the Governor's Office of Economic Development called GoBiz. So we offer no cost one-on-one advising. It's confidential as well for all small businesses. And at the Finance Center, we are specializing in helping people get loans for their business. And right now it's all disaster mode businesses, disaster loan businesses. And I'm the director for the Finance Center. We also have Sunita Maharaj. She's the associate director on this call as well to help with some Q&As. We also have our director for Northern California region, for our whole region network, and that is Kristen Johnson. And then we also have our associate director of programs, Ann Johnson Stronsberg, who's going to help with some of the Q&A. So to jump right into it, we have a disclaimer that we show every time because things are changing all the time. And this information was correct when we put it together about a half hour ago. But things are changing all the time. And so there's also like a few more disclaimers under that based on some questions that we have received multiple times that we wanted to put in here. And that is to don't hesitate to apply for either the EIDL or the PPP when it comes available again. The PPP is coming available very, very soon. The EIDL is coming as well, but we're not sure when that is actually launching. So also just quick caveat, those of you that have investors or partners that are involved in your company, whether VCs or angels, please talk to them before you apply for these loans because it's very important. They will need to help you decide on that. So we don't have access to check on the status of your submitted SBA EIDL loan. So please be patient. If you did apply after March 29th and you have not heard back yet, and then they shut it off, you will be processed because you are in the queue. So you are good. They are going to get to you hopefully within the next week or two. And then, so then also SBA states that the loans in the queue will be processed. All right. So as a lot of you may or may not know, there's some new money coming, and it's about $380 billion for business loans. And within that, there is $320 billion for Triple P, for the Paycheck Protection Program. There's about $50 billion for the EIDL, which is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, the one I just spoke about, which that new portal has not relaunched yet. We are still waiting from SBA, and they may or may not join this call to assist us with these questions for the EIDL. There is $10 billion that is going to be appropriated to the EIDL advance, and that is meant for the advance is the forgiven part of the EIDL, and those monies are used for if you're a sole proprietor, you qualify for $1,000. If you have 10 or more employees, you qualify for $10,000. If you have 3 or 5, then it's 3,000, 5,000. So it depends on the amount of employees that you have as far as what you qualify for. So I know this is a very quick rundown, one slide Reader's Digest version of what the monies are used for and what's launching. But this is just kind of break it down very quickly for you. So for those of you that have applied for the EIDL or that are going to apply when it comes back up, these are the forms that may or may not be asked for. And you may ask me, well, why are you telling me about it if it may not be asked for? Well, the reason why is when EIDL was first launched from SBA, they were being asked for, and then they had some issues with their application and their and applying the web portal. So they've kind of been silent on this, but we are planners at the SBDC, and we are here to help you kind of put all your financials together. And these are the financials that they're probably going to ask for. So I just kind of highlighted them really quickly here. Obviously, we can go to Q&A after I do this quick presentation, and then you can ask some questions about these. But this deck will be shared. Ellen has it and can share it. But the forms, real quick, they're 2202, 1368, 413D, 4506T. The ones that you really need to pay attention to for multiple owners is just like the 413D and 4506T. How many people need to fill them out? For the EIDL loan, you do need to guarantee the loan. So anybody over 20% ownership is held responsible through their personal financial statement and their personal taxes through a 4506T. So the forms needed for the Triple P, there is a universal form. You can ask your local SBDC office, or you can email us at loans@asksbdc.com, and we can get that information to you. There, if you're a sole proprietor, or so there's a lot of synonym words for sole proprietor. It could be self-employed, it could be a 1099 contractor. All those are encompassed under a sole proprietor. So you need to get together your 2019 1099s. So if you have one contract, great. If you have 10, then you need to get together all 10 of those. So all other entities that are not sole proprietors, you know who you are. You need to get together your 2019 W-2s for all employees, your 941s or 940s, depending on what your quarterly reports are within your organization. You have to get all that together. We have been told by ADP and Paychecks that you could just go online and sign in, and you can get access to all these. They're kind of putting it in a portal for you to make it a lot easier. So sole proprietors are very different. You know, the PPP application came out on the 3rd of this month. Then they said that on the 10th, sole proprietors can apply. Well, their application is the same, but their paperwork is obviously very different. And thanks to my associate director, Sunita Maharaj, and some research that she's done, she was able to kind of quickly break these two equations down for you as a sole proprietor. Sorry, if you look at your Schedule C, line 31, that's where you have your net profit or loss. If you want to figure out how to calculate your loan amount, you just take that line 31, you divide it by 12, and then you multiply it by 2.5, and that's 2.5 months, just like any other entity. But if you want to figure out what's forgivable, it's a little different than if you're not a sole proprietor. You take that line 31, you divide it by 52, because of 52 weeks in a year, and you multiply that by 8, and that'll tell you what's forgivable. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions on that one. So we will we'll help you find PPP lenders if your lender is at capacity, or they just don't want to take your application, or they're not taking any more applications, or they just can't process them fast enough. That's happening to a lot of big banks. There's a lot of smaller banks that are doing exceptionally well, and they're processing this paperwork a lot faster than a bigger bank. But there are some, you can go to sba.gov/paycheck protection find, type your zip code in, and you can find a lender or lenders near you. You can also go to some of these non-customer lenders, which we've been able to find through our research, lendhistory.com, Funding Circle, United Business Bank, and so forth. If you need help accessing these, we can definitely help you at no cost. All right, so the state guarantee disaster loan options, for those of you that have watched us do this, I don't know, 10, 15 times, we originally were talking about the California guarantee disaster loan options like they were here. And unfortunately, it took a while for for iBank, which is the infrastructure bank at the governor's office, as well as the local financial development corporations, to figure out how to piecemeal these loans together. So there's two types of loans that you can qualify for. There's a $50,000 microloan fund. And if you want to find out more information, we are told to tell you to go to this website. You can't call a bank, you can't call a lender, you can't call an FDC. You need to go to this website and find out the most important information that is best for you. If you have issues navigating this website, please email us or call us and we can help you. The other loan that you qualify for, it could be qualified for, is up to $1 million. It's a financial, and this is run through the financial development corporations. They're called FDCs. In Northern California, we have two. We have one in Sacramento, we have one in Oakland. So we kind of broke up our region based on where your business is placed or where you need assistance at. If it's Solano South, which would cover all the Bay Area, all 9 counties, Santa Cruz on the coast, that is, you can email this gentleman by the name of Chris Horton. So his email is right here. If it's Yolo North, Sacramento, Mount Shasta, Redding, Humboldt, all those great counties, you can email us at loans@asksbdc.com and we can help kind of put your financials together and get you to the right lender or FDC. So the only way that one would qualify for these two loans is if you were disqualified for both the EIDL and the Triple P. So I'll say that again. The only way you qualify for this $50,000 microloan fund or $1 million disaster loan fund is if you are ineligible or disqualified for the EIDL and the Triple P. So we haven't seen a really long list as to why someone would be disqualified for one of these loan programs, but this is like the 4 things that we found. There's no list from SBA if you're wondering. So it's either credit issues, either credit's too low or you had a bankruptcy or something on there that disqualified you. If you have a non-US ID, that actually disqualifies you like straight up for the EIDL and the Triple P. But a 501c6. So real quick, the credit issues, we don't have, we and SBA don't have a specific FICO score number that would cut you off 100%. We do not have that. So, and it's not going to be told to you because it's an internal score with SBA. So what they're doing is they're taking a blended score of your personal FICO and your business FICO, and they're kind of putting it together and determining if it's okay for them to move forward with a loan. So if you're a 501c6, you do not qualify for the EIDL or the Triple P. But so that means you don't even have to apply. You could just apply for this $1 million loan fund or microloan fund. If you don't have any payroll, there's some sole proprietors that don't have any payroll or 1099 contractors don't have any payroll, and they're not going to get approved through the Triple P potentially, and the EIDL may or may not get approved, then or qualified. And then there's other reasons as to one would not qualify, but we don't know those reasons. We would have to be told by you if you were disqualified. We'd have to know what that means. And I know I keep stumbling over my words. So real quick, it's disqualified instead of declined. So declined is not used in terminology for iBank to qualify for these loans. You have to say you're disqualified, and it's a line item on the documents when you sign for these loans that you acknowledge that you were disqualified for both loans, and then you qualify for this loan. All right. So if you're looking for other financials, you're looking for other loans similar to like we have not been told what is required for the $50,000 microloan fund. Probably very, very little, probably nothing really. Maybe a credit score, maybe a P&L. We're not sure. But the $1 million loan, you're going to have to get together a lot of your financials, which is very similar to what you would normally get together if you're going to go buy a building or buy a business or expand or buy a piece of equipment. And this is what it is. And if your CPA is super busy and your bookkeeper is super busy and your tax accountant is super busy, please reach out to us. We can help you, assist you to understand these financials, to show the best picture story, their projections, a letter of explanation to the lenders so that you have a better chance of getting approved. We can do that for you at no cost. All right, so this is our last screen. We will keep this screen up and is going to jump into some Q&A, but this is our actually our marketing director and marketing team. Marketing director is Aaron Phelps for Northern California SBDC. Him and his team put together asksbdc.com, where you can get updated information. And actually, thanks to them, this is being live streamed on the website as we speak, which is really awesome. So, and this is the phone number that you can call. You can talk to a live person same day. If you leave a voicemail, we'll get back to you same day. You can email us at this email, and then for Spanish-speaking individuals or business owners, you can email us as well at espanol@asksbdc.com. And then also, there is a disaster contact info for SBA that you can call, and there is an email that you can email if you have questions about your EIDL loan, not your PPP. PPP is the lender. If you have questions about that, you need to get up out of your office and go down there and talk to them and be very proactive. The SBA loan, you can't do that because they're not a lender. They're in DC, so you need to either call this number or email them to get updates that you're looking for. So thank you very much for the time to speak to you today. We will now go into Q&A, and thank you.
And you're muted.
See
A quick
that?
reminder to everybody, please put your questions into the Q&A. We've got a few people have been throwing them in the chat. Recently in the chat, I've put in the Dropbox link where you can download a PDF of the presentation we've just seen. So it should be up there on everybody's chat right now.
Great. Thank you, everybody, and thanks for joining us today. We have a bunch of questions. We might be able to get through them today. If you all be looking at the questions, upvoting them so that we can get to those first, that would really be helpful. Okay. Daz is asking a question saying, I am a sole proprietor, no employees, no 1099 income. I received $1,000 yesterday, which I assume was the EIDL advance. The description is SBAD Treasury 310 MISC pay, but have received no communication of any kind from SBA. Have no idea if there's a non-advance loan for which I have been approved, how much that might be, when I might receive it, what portion of the total will be forgiven. Please advise.
So yeah, so we were sometimes the business owners like yourself are the best people to give us information, since you are experiencing it daily and you're actually the ones applying. We're not applying. So what's great about that is we were told, I've been receiving screenshots from clients like yourself that say, hey, what is this SBAD Treasury thing? I said, I don't know, that looks like your advance, because we weren't told that SBA was going to do that way. But when you apply, you do give them your routing number and account number. So therefore, they were just going to inject that into your bank account like a paycheck or some other form of payment. So that is the EIDL advance. The EIDL loan, that's a different way for them to communicate with you. They are going to email you and assign you, either email or call you or both, and assign you a case manager. And once they do that, they may or may not ask you for additional paperwork, but that will be other communication. They're not going to directly put that money into your account.
And the advance is the forgiven part. So that $1,000 is forgiven. The loan, the EIDL loan is not forgiven. It's at 3.75% for 30 years if you do end up getting a loan through EIDL.
And as a sole proprietor with no employees, you can count yourself as one employee though for the EIDL, correct, Sunita?
Yes.
Okay, so one employee would be yourself, and that's why you qualified for the $1,000. All right, thank you. I've applied for PPP and EIDL. I've received confirmation numbers, but that's all. Will we still receive money, or should we give up? What are the next steps?
So for the EIDL loan, if you applied after March 29th, then you're good. You're in the queue, meaning they are going to contact you and get to you. They just got some extra money injected into the program, as you saw earlier. So you're good. You just need to be very, very patient. If you want to start filling out those other forms that I went over, I would recommend that 100% to be super prepared. For the triple P, if you have not heard from your lender, then you need to call them. You need to harass them. You need to go down and talk to them. You need to knock on their door because they're still open. And you need to ask them, hey, what's going on? Do I have a loan number? Do I have an E-Tran number? E-Tran is some internal speak that I'm going to share with you. It's called E-Tran, E-T-R-A-N. It's the system that the banks talk to SBA with to get you a loan number. If you do not have a triple P loan number currently, and you're still like, I don't know, 1,000 people in line, then more than likely you're not going to get your triple P processed. You need to get that loan number. You need to be very proactive. The new money's hitting the marketplace that I went over. I'm not sure if it's hitting the marketplace today or tomorrow, but it's here. So you can still, you just need to be very communicative with your lender.
Jennifer is asking, do you have any information on PUA? I don't know what this is. Anyway, as a business owner, I'm not eligible for unemployment insurance, but might be for PUA, question mark.
I think Sunita can help out with that question. Possibly.
PUA is the pandemic unemployment assistance.
I think that's to the EDD.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So
yes,
we're not EDD experts, just as a clarification for anybody. We're really here, the bulk of our knowledge has to do with the loan products that are available through SBA and state guarantee, et cetera. That said, we still come across this info. So Sunita, whatever you know.
sure. So I would definitely check on the EDD website to see when that's going to open. The last we heard was the 28th, but that may have changed. I'm trying to look on the website right now to see if there's any updated information from California. So that's the best that I could give you at this point in time. It looks like the benefits maximum of 26 weeks, but that is where you would get that information, is go to the EDD California to get the most updated info and application.
Okay.
Sorry,
Sherry.
I joined a bit late, by the way. Also, I'm Noah Brodom at the U.S. Small Business Administration. I was on another call, so thanks for having me, folks.
Thanks for joining us, Noah. Sherry is a sole proprietor who showed a loss in 2019. Her business is an events business. She's not taking any revenue in. She's having to refund events that had to cancel. She's trying to cover rent and utilities. Any particular loan product you would recommend, Scott or Sunita?
There's nothing that is said that if you took a loss in 2019 that you don't qualify. And we're also not supposed to discourage you from applying. So I strongly recommend that you apply for the EIDL when it relaunches. I also strongly recommend that you apply for the triple P. And lenders are also not allowed to essentially disqualify you, discourage you from applying as well, based on the regulations. So again, there's nothing that is said that if you took a loss the previous year, there may be a reason you took a loss. Either you took a loss because you just took a loss, or you took a loss because you bought a lot of new equipment, or you did a lot of other stuff that you don't normally do. You did some R&D, research and development, that you don't normally do. So there are ways around it to show a better picture, even though the bottom number is a negative number. So I would just recommend to apply. If you're cautious in doing that and you're still not sure based on what I just said, please email us and send in your 2019 P&L so that we can look at it and help you understand it.
Okay. Koji says, I'm an owner of an LLC and not on the payroll. Can I take a salary as an employee and use PPP? If so, how much is the maximum?
That would be awesome if you could do that. I highly doubt that the program was created for you to do that. If you don't normally pay yourself, you can't. I don't think you can necessarily hire yourself and pay yourself $100 grand. But
Your lender will also likely rely on last year's payroll expenses or, prior history for payroll expenses rather than new changes.
So to Noah's remark, so if you were in business in 2019, they are going to look at your 2019 Q4, which was from October to December. If you are calendar year, if you're fiscal, it's really confusing. But if you're calendar year, which most people are, October to November is your quarter 4 of 2019. They're going to look at that quarter 4 payroll reports, and that's what they base it on. If you actually started in January of this year, then obviously it makes it real tricky because you have not had a quarter before the declaration date, which was February 15th of this year. So you have 45 days to essentially show that you had some sort of payroll. And if that is the case for you on the phone today, please email us and we will help you navigate that, or call us.
I'm going to combine two questions that Joan and Jen have asked. One of them is saying that they received an EIDL advance for $1,000 because they had one W-2 employee. Can they reapply because the two owners were not on that initial application? The other one is saying that she had turned in her application and had put 0 for employees, not including herself. So does it hurt their application to go in and try to augment it now? Should they just leave it as is? What is your best thought, Noah?
Right. So if, I guess on my advice is if you already have an application in, don't keep putting in an application. Unless you had applied prior to March 30th and were in like a smaller, like there's one category of folks. If you applied through the short form application, the one that's online already, you shouldn't keep reapplying. When it gets to the step of loan evaluation, the loan evaluation itself under the EIDL doesn't use the number of employees you've included as part of that calculation. So what you included on the number of employees listed, won't impact the outcome of the loan offer on the EIDL. On the advance, I don't know if I've got a great piece of advice outside of going down the 1-800 number, but they aren't really modifying applications that are under the advance, or they're not modifying applications for considerations of for the advance itself. So unfortunately, I don't have great clear advice about what to do aside from saying that's probably not best to keep putting in a new application.
But we'll probably move them further down the list, right? Or
right. With the economic injury disaster loan program, those applications are being evaluated on a first come, first served basis.
Yeah. Okay. So for those, Sunita and Scott, for those people who received their the Paycheck Protection Program loan, what can you say specifically about the timeline for spending those funds? When do they have to spend those funds?
Like right away. They have to, from the time that they get the money, they have to spend as much as they can in the 8 weeks, the 8 weeks starting from the day that they get the money. So it's pretty simple, but you have to spend 75%. We didn't put it in our slides. There's like way too much information, but 75% or more has to be spent on payroll costs. So that could be workman's comp insurance, medical leave, all that great stuff, employee salaries, compensations. It could be all you could, and you could spend 100% of your money in the first 8 weeks after you get the money. The day you get the money, you count your 8 weeks from that day. You can spend 100% on payroll, and it'll probably more than likely be fully forgiven. If you want to include your rent, utilities, and interest debt payments because you don't have an EIDL loan yet, then you totally could do that, but you can only spend 25% or less of that money in the first 8 weeks on your rent, utilities, or interest debt payments.
I think the only thing I would add on to that is the Paycheck Protection Program also allows for expenses to be reimbursed going back to February 15th on those payroll expenses. The process with forgiveness is, that exact, like what are the nitty gritty questions, like what is that the exact steps you need to get for forgiveness. Those are going to be implemented by the lender. And so my encouragement is also to work with your lender to and look at your promissory note as well, to see what your lender expects of you for that forgiveness piece. That's also an item on the SBA where detailed guidance on the forgiveness portion of the program has still yet to be released by the Treasury and SBA. So it's one of those elements of the Paycheck Protection Program, a program that's been around for about 2 weeks. It's being built, that's the building the plane as you fly it program. And so now we've gotten through the pain points of applications, what does the application look like? What do the steps look like? And now we're moving into that 8-week period now that folks are getting funds, where there's really detailed questions about forgiveness. And so part of it is also sort of stay tuned about additional, guidance and regulations and rulemaking for the forgiveness portion. But the part of the forgiveness that is really clear is that 75% minimum needs to go towards payroll expenses. It's a payroll expense driven program. And that needs to be spent within 8 weeks of having received the funds.
Okay, Mark is saying that initially he was offered through the EIDL loan $15,000. And he's saying that it won't go very far in terms of being able to save his business, where he's saying that he's got $100,000 a month in obligations for expenses. He's said that some people applied later in the process and received half of their annual income. He's concerned that he was caught up in an early process and that he'd like to see if there's a way that he could be reconsidered. What is the process for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, I got some clarification on that just this morning because I've been working with a lot of business owners with that question. So the clarification that I'd gotten from our Office of Disaster Assistance just this morning is that you can put in a request for additional funds, loan funds from SBA. So you should send in a written request for an increase with your schedule of liabilities and your IRS form and any other documentation that you want SBA to consider when they're evaluating whether or not to add additional funds. And you'd send that to the disaster customer service at sba.gov email address. And then the advice that we have from our Office of Disaster Assistance is that individuals should still close on their current loan and then submit that written request for additional funds, because that will limit delays on that current loan. And so that's the advice from our Office of Disaster Assistance as well, that taking that $15,000 initial funding, it doesn't mean that you can't ask, you can't put in that request for additional funds.
Okay. Thank you. No, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm going to step away for just a minute and Alan is going to take over momentarily here.
You lucky people. Okay, so we got one from Shelley. Her question was that the PPP is about the PPP. What does she do if her bank is not accepting applications? And as an independent contractor, she's got no pay. On a Schedule C, she has no payroll. What should she put in the average monthly payroll box? Net income, health insurance costs for herself, and IRA contributions, or something else? I think we had the answer kind of around the.
Yeah, we have a slide for that, and she asked a lot of questions in that one question, but there's way too much information in that one question to give her a quick direct answer. But if she has not heard back from her bank, or she is doing or either they're at full capacity, then yes, I don't know if she's viewing the screen that we showed, but Ellen's going to send it out. There are lenders that are non-bank lenders, or that will lend to you even if you're not a customer, since they don't take deposits. They're non-bank lenders, and they can assist you with your loans. And if you're not sure how to get to them, you please email us or call us, and we will get them. We'll help you find them and put your financials together. Yeah, if you're a sole proprietor and you don't have payroll, then we did show that slide on how to calculate what you qualify for. So for all triple P individuals that are business owners that are going to apply, it's 2.5 months worth of payroll costs and or rent, utilities, interest, debt payments. If you want to include that, I recommend just to include payroll to guarantee that it'll be mostly or all forgiven. But if you want, it's your choice. You can include all that other stuff. You take your line 31 on your Schedule C. You divide that by 12 for 12 months, and then you divide that, or you times that by 2.5, and that will tell you what your loan amount is. It's 2.5 months of your profit or loss. And I know that's confusing, just to teach you right here, right now, very quickly. So please email us or call us, and email us your Schedule C so we can look at it and help you dissect that for you.
All right. The next one's from Susan, who applied for an idle loan on the April the 4th. Has not heard back yet. Called 3 times, but can't give me information. I read that if we applied through the expedited portal, we will not be able to check the status online. How do we know that we applied through the expedited portal or not? What does it mean?
So the expedited portal is the one that is, that's the one, if you had to create a username and a password, you were not on the expedited portal. The URL for the expedited portal was covid19relief.sba.gov. It was the application that was turned on starting, if you said April 4th, so you almost definitely, all right, so April 4th, you definitely used it, because the other application wasn't, the other application was taken down, I believe, on March 30th. So the only people who might have used the slower application applied prior to March 30th.
Okay, somebody else had a question that a few people resonated with, which they applied for the PPP through one lender who hasn't submitted yet to the SBA. Their regular bank, Wells Fargo, just opened the application window, and he wanted to know whether he should apply through Wells Fargo also, and if it comes through, can cancel with the first lender.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you could, or you could call the lender that you applied for and ask them where you are in the queue, if you're like number 1, or you're number 1,000, or you're number 100,000. And then you could ask them to withdraw your application, and then you can apply for Wells Fargo. We don't suggest that you apply to 10 different lenders for the PPP just because you're not hearing back. There's a reason you're not hearing back. It doesn't mean that if you leave them, you're going to go hear back from Wells Fargo like instantaneously. It's going to take time. You're one of 4 million in the state of California that are applying, so it's going to take a little time.
I can provide, I mean, I've worked with a lot of business owners who have, it's a strategy, that business owners are, there's that question of, if we put in an application with multiple places, how does that impact my application? And there are upsides and downsides to it. But on SBA's side, I can just, explain how it works, which is that the first lender to submit an application to our system, to the E-Tran system, will lock out any other lender from submitting an application on your behalf. That could be a good thing or a bad thing. I've worked with business owners who did not like the loan that was submitted by the lender into E-Tran, and they've had, they put in an application one day with one lender, and then they recalculated their payroll expenses, put in a different application with a different lender, and and one lender, submitted that first application and locked out what may have been a nicer or a better loan for them from the second lender. And in order to correct that, they have to go to the first lender, ask the first lender to cancel the loan, wait for that to happen, and then go back to their second lender, have the second lender submit the loan at that point. And all that is time on a program that moves pretty quickly. So that's the downside that I've worked with some business owners on, who have put in applications at multiple places. But if you put in an application with multiple places, one lender will lock out any other lender. The first lender to submit locks out any other lender.
Okay. PPP payback, 2 years. The question is, can that be extended? Steve is asking.
It's not a question that you can ask us or SBA. It has to do with the lender. I think the answer is no, because that's the way it was written in the SOPs, which is standard operating procedures. But if there was a potential possibility that it could be extended, the lender would be able to tell you. Yeah.
Okay.
But probably not until the end of your term or close to the end of your term. So right now, that's, we don't know. We know it's 2 years at 1% is all we know at this point in time, but maybe in another 6-12 months, there'll be additional information on that, being able to extend it or not.
Okay. And he was also asking about the 6/30 date that PPP funds have to be spent by. Sunita, could you address that?
Sure. I believe that was the date when they first initiated it, thinking that it would all be deployed by then. But unfortunately, that is not the case. So that date is no longer being used. Once you get your funding, the 8 weeks start that day. So 8 weeks from that date is when you should have your money spent and set at least 75% of that towards your payroll for forgiveness.
Okay. I'm going to scroll past some of these questions that are specific to, I submitted my application after the 29th. I still haven't heard. What should I do? The answer is wait. If you're in the queue for EIDL, there is no better answer for you in your individual situation. If you applied for a PPP loan, then the best thing to do is contact that individual lender. What are you going to say, Noah?
No, I think that's a great answer. I did want to ask, because I came in partway through the presentation, I'm sure you talked about the potential additional funding that's about to get signed for the next phase. Did you already? I'm sure
we did, but why don't you just reiterate it for everybody, because it's going to probably sound better coming from you.
Okay. So yeah, as folks know, last Thursday we stopped accepting new applications for both EIDL and PPP programs. That doesn't mean that that applications stopped being processed and filed. It just meant that new applications were not being accepted. So if you'd had an approved PPP loan, it's had budget assigned to it. If you had submitted an EIDL loan, those were being continued to be processed and funded on a first come first served basis. And then since they closed last Thursday, there have been ongoing negotiations in Congress about a next phase of funding for the programs. And there has not been anything that has been signed into law as of yet. So appropriations have not been made. There's been a lot of discussion and articles written right now that funding is here, but until a bill is signed by the president, it's not official, and we can't churn those applications back on. And even after it is signed into law, it depends on what that funding bill looks like. If it's a very simple funding bill that simply just adds more money to the pot, it could be as simple as just putting the applications back up and turning the databases on. If that funding came with significant changes to the program, our agency will have to implement those. And so we may have to take that time to implement, changes to the program before turning it back on. That's just kind of the update about where we are in that uncertainty about additional funding. But when it comes back online, in terms of the size of the funding as well, for the economic injury disaster loan program, what's essentially about $400 billion worth of capacity for funding was authorized, and for the PPP loan program, what was it, another 350 billion?
Yeah, 320. Yeah.
320. Yeah, that was what has. That's until that's signed and and put into law. Those are the tentative numbers that are up as of this morning. But negotiations are ongoing, and any of that can change. But that's what is tentatively on the table for potential approval. And when it reopens, SBA especially on the Paycheck Protection Program, we don't keep a queue. So if you have an application that maybe you put in with a lender, that lender didn't hand it over to SBA to sit in a line somewhere. If it's sitting in a line somewhere, it's sitting at that lender's institution for submission when we reopen our databases, but SBA doesn't maintain a line for the Paycheck Protection Program. We only, we take approvals as they're transmitted to us from a lender, and when appropriations are met, then we stop taking approvals.
Okay. There was one great question I wanted to make sure that we answered. So for somebody who had applied for EIDL, they figured out just recently that they put the wrong routing number for their account. Should they contact that 800 number, Noah, to update their routing number? Is that the best route?
Yes. And yeah, I mean, that's definitely the only place where an individual might be able to pull up an application and make edits to it. It depends on where their application is in kind of the pipeline, whether they're able to pull it up and make edits to it or not. Mm-hmm. So that can be unsatisfying, but it's sort of the state of where that program is right now.
Okay. Nikki is asking if the shelter-in-place order hasn't lifted and we can't bring back employees to work to start using the PPP funds. The purpose of the PPP funds was to divert from unemployment. And so far the instruction has been that you would just put them back on payroll even though they're not working. Is that what you've heard, Scott?
Well, there's.
Yeah. Go ahead, Noah.
I would just say, that's absolutely correct. There's not a requirement that employees be working for the Paycheck Protection Program. It is a strategy. Business owners have leeway to use those funds, in creative ways. So some business owners that I've talked with, even though they can't bring their employees back, they're having they're doing workforce development work with their employees while they're at home. So they put them on payroll and they're having their employees train up so that when they can come back, they'll have employees that will bring that knowledge back to work. There's flexibility. If you can't do any of that, then or there's some employees that furloughed folks right away and they can bring them back and offer them back pay during that furlough time to bring those employees back on. And there's flexibility there, but it's really clear that it's not an encouragement to reopen your business in violation of a shelter-in-place order. We should be making those payments whether or not people can work or not.
Okay, Todd was asking some clarification regarding PPP and EIDL. And yes, Todd, you're correct. PPP are funds that are coming directly from a bank that the SBA has guaranteed, and idle funds are coming directly from the Small Business Administration. Daniel is saying that he has a seasonal business. So he doesn't currently have any employees on payroll. They hire their employees through a temp agency, so they never have any on payroll. So we don't qualify for the PPP or idle. Is that true? Sunita, Scott, Noah?
Does not mean they don't qualify. Once the idle loan is up again, the portal is up, I would apply for that. For the PPP, I'd actually have to see your financials to see how you document income. Is it a Schedule C? If it is a Schedule C, line 31 divided by 12 times 2.5, that's the income that you can, that's the amount that you can request for the PPP.
Okay, so Daniel, please come to the SBDC. We can help you through this process. These more difficult, like individualized situations are great. A great reason why going to, asksbdc.com, finding your local SBDC service center, or calling our direct number is a good way to go. Okay, for the idle loan, Rick is asking which credit reporting agency is used for the credit checks?
Yeah, Noah, which ones?
Wait, for the,
Like TransUnion, Equifax, or Experian, or is it just one that you guys made up one night?
I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah, nobody knows. Nobody knows. It's an internal blended score that they have internally. So we don't have the answer.
Even I don't have the answer for that. That's an Office of Disaster Assistance, kind of whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
Okay, Shannon is saying overnight she received a single $1,000 deposit into her checking account. They're a sole proprietor with no payroll employees. She's asking, will they get additional funding from EIDL?
The advance is the first step, and that so that I guess the answer is maybe, because now it's going to move over to a loan, to an evaluation on the loan itself. And
But it's a good sign. At least they know that they're in the queue.
yes, yeah, it means you're in the queue. You've moved over to the next process. An advance is always processed before a loan is approved or denied or evaluated. So it means you've crossed that first step in that process, and now they're moving on to the loan evaluation step.
Christine is asking a question that I think is so specific. I'm going to need you to utilize that Ask SBDC phone number for. Let's see. Okay. A lot of sole proprietor questions about their own paycheck. So Keshav is saying also, I'm a sole proprietor. I don't take a bi-weekly paycheck. How can I include my salary for the smaller period in the PPP?
31. Yeah.
I don't understand what they mean by the smaller period. Do you mean January through
I'm feeling
February?
like it's the 8-week period.
Yeah. So just like we said, if you're Schedule C, line 31 divided by 12 times 2.5. If there is negative income there, then yes, that is going to be more difficult to qualify for the PPP because you don't show income. That's the only way that you'd be able to show income is line 31. If you're taking losses, it's difficult to show that you actually took draws throughout the year because you have to have income there to take a draw.
Okay. Richard is saying, what is the likelihood of idle applications opening up again? Richard, that is a great question. We don't have any statistics on that. Currently, it is under consideration. It's at the House of Representatives, and it would be our representatives in Washington, D.C. that would have that would be taking the bets on whether or not that's going to be coming open again. That said, the idle funds that are under consideration currently are a fraction of what had originally been set aside for idle funds. So when idle applications do open up, the likelihood is they won't stay open for very long. So I would
Well,
definitely get your
I can
information.
clarify a little bit on that as well, because yeah, this kept me up, earlier in the week, because I was like, what is, understanding exactly how that calculation worked. But for the idle funds, the way that budgeting works for the economic injury disaster loan program is, so in the current bill, there's $50 billion that is tied to the economic injury disaster loan program, 50. That doesn't mean that the amount of money available to lend to businesses is only $50 billion, because what needs to be budgeted for federal loan programs is what is called the subsidy cost. So if a loan is not paid back, because these are loans, they're going to get paid back. And if 100% of the loans got paid back 100% of the time, and they cost nothing to issue, they could say we're going to budget $0, and we're going to just make all the money back. For appropriations, though, they know that there are loans that aren't going to be able to be paid back, and they need to make an estimate of what the cost of those loans over that, the 30-year loans over that 30-year period is going to be. So $50 billion has been appropriated, and there's a 12% subsidy rate for, this is like some baseball, in terms of what budget, federal budgeting looks like. But the short answer is that is the equivalent of $400 billion being available to be made under the economic injury disaster loan program to business owners. So a $50 billion reserve, essentially, to cover losses over a 30-year period is what represents $400 billion of loans being issued under that program.
Thank you, Noah. That'll have to be our last question for the day, as we are at 11:30. I do encourage you all to please, if you are seeking funding for your small business, please reach out to the SBDC at asksbdc.com. Put in your local zip code and find a center nearest you, or contact our 833 Ask SBDC phone number. Thank you again, and we will be doing this webinar on Friday. For those of you, just so that, for those of you who have participated in a few of these, just know, beginning next week, we will have a registration link for these webinars, so they won't be ones that you can just drop into without registering in advance. Now, registering in advance can be 1 minute before the actual webinar starts, so it's not a ton of advance notice that you need to have, but just want you to be aware of that. Thank you all. Thank you to our panelists, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, everyone. Have a
Thanks,
good day.
everyone. I put links to download the deck, and also to get access to review this on our YouTube channel in the chat. So a chance for anybody to see those. I'm now going to stop our recording and stop the YouTube.